Okay. Welcome everyone. I'm really grateful to see so many names and faces and people popping up for our first session. My name is Juan Carlos Lopez. I'm coming to you from Acadia University, and Acadia University sits on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. As a settler and immigrant in these lands, what this means to me is that I have to stop and listen, and then listen some more so that I can learn the truth. And learning this truth will help me move towards reconciliation. I also want to acknowledge that these lands have been inhabited, and we have had the presence of people of African descent for centuries, more than 300 centuries. And I say this because this is important. It's important to me, and I feel as my wanted and my duty to learn about this so that we can create a better future for everyone. So with that, I'm gonna jump right into Dr. Jones Square so that she starts her presentation, because she came here with a group of students and we want to hear from them. So Shoshannah, take it. It's yours.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. So many wonderful students here with me, and excited for you to hear the really insightful thoughts about teaching and learning. I know it will really change how you think about it. So thanks for being here, everyone. I'll just read the land acknowledgement, where I'm based at Bishop's University, an assistant professor in the Department of English. So Bishop's University is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people. We acknowledge the Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederacy, the traditional stewards and protectors of the territories upon which we're learning. So this is the amazing group of people that we have here today. They've been students, various capacities at various times. And again, I've learned so much from them, and just excited for you to hear from them next. So thank you. And everything I'm going to be talking about and doing, it's nothing new. There are people doing amazing work here at Bishop's. Jessica Riddell, again, doing amazing collaborative teaching. Dr. Brophy, Dr. Malley, co-teaching. Dr. McBride at Teaching Award. This university is just filled with stars. So again, it's been a privilege just learning from all of the faculty as well as the students. So thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. So in his preface to Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth maintains that the purpose of poetry is to produce excitement in coexistence. And I've realized along the way that that's exactly what I love doing through my teaching, is connecting people, connecting them to one another, to new ideas, and just feeling this joy that we get to live and learn together. So really wanted to bring that in. And again, I approach my teaching from interdisciplinary perspectives, really like focusing on mentoring students and empowering them, collaborating with them. Kind of selfish on my part, because I feel like those collaborations they just really benefit my own teaching so much, because you can really know how to teach when you just ask them directly how they learn best. And also I'm promoting and fostering empathy and curiosity and creativity. As I'll talk about, there's this really innate link between empathy and creativity. So I'll be talking about that as well. And quotation that really fits with my theme of interdisciplinarity and interconnection is Barry Commoner's first law of ecology, that everything is connected to everything else. And that's one of my favorite parts about teaching too, is my students will hear this all the time if I'm teaching Frankenstein, and then you can, there's the psychological standpoint, there's the science to it, there's a literary background to it, there's a historical aspect, as Archer will talk about. So again, just coming to one idea from multiple perspectives, and recognizing that just like our hyper-connected brains, and just like the internet with all these connections and hyper-connections, that's what like academia really is pointing out these connections between things, and thereby enriching our understanding and experience of it. This is an interesting book, Robot Proof from 2017. And I really like how he describes this holistic approach to learning. So he's talking about a new discipline called humanics, the goal of which is to nurture our species' unique trait of creativity and flexibility. But when he defines systems thinking, again, like thinking from various different systems, He talks about one of our cognitive capacities being the ability to view either an enterprise, a machine, or a subject holistically, making connections between its different functions, but in a really integrative way. So again, you have these disparate thoughts and connections, and then all of a sudden you integrate them. And I think, again, that's the process of the classroom is the students are all reading separately, and then we come together in the class with these diverse, exciting perspectives, and then find a way to integrate them. So again, I just think that interdisciplinary approach is so key. My research and publications, again, focus would be the imagination, creativity, empathy, interconnection, and the pro-social potential of reading literature. My students have heard this a lot too, but this idea that reading increases our ability to empathize because it requires us to take multiple perspectives, to step outside ourselves and see the world from a lens that we might not have otherwise. So again, this idea that it's expanding our perceptual horizons and also physically causing neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells. Marianne Wolf, she's actually the director of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at UCLA. She has two amazing books, one called Reader Come Home, and she talks about deep reading and says deep reading is always about connection, connecting what we know to what we read to what we feel to what we think, and how we think to how we live out our lives in a connected world. So again, this idea of deep connection, and then that's only increased when those connections are being made in the classroom together. So again, you just all these kind of glimmerings of ideas, sort of reaching outwards and branching like the branches of a tree. And again, just the enriching nature of that. What else? So one way I really like to talk about interdisciplinarity is via synesthesia, which again, my students have heard this so much, I'm sorry. So it's both a rhetorical device in literature and a neurological condition. And it's useful in both senses. So as a rhetorical device in literature, it's one mode of sensation is described in terms of another. And that happening serves to increase the reader's sensorial experience and thereby increase their ability to engage with it and integrate what they're learning and understand it. So John Keats, Romantic era poet, in Ode to a Nightingale says, "Oh, for a draught of vintage, tasting of flora and the country green of dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth." So M.H. Abrams summarizes it better than I could have. He just says what he's calling for is a drink that tastes of sight, color, motion, sound, and heat. So this like multi-sensorial experience. And then the reader, in reading about this, sort of in kind of uniting these physical sensations, and then you have this sort of altered vision of the world, this cross-sensory perspective, which again expands our perceptual possibilities. So just in reading this, we're sort of experiencing what it's like to have this sort of hyper-connected synesthetic understanding of the world. And again, that plays into the academy when we can think about it in that sense. Again, it's also a neurological condition. 1 in 5 people actually have it, so it's quite common. And people with synesthesia are considered neurodivergent. And that's another side of teaching that I think is so important, is just the value and beauty of neurodiversity, because that is, the brain is extra connected. What Thomas Armstrong writes in The Value of Neurodiversity is, just as we use the terms cultural diversity and biodiversity to refer to the rich variety of social heritage and biological life, we need a term that conveys a sense of richness of the different kinds of brains. And so that's where the term neurodiversity came from. So again, and that fits with interdisciplinarity too, just this diversity of views and ideas, and we're all bringing them together to see the world anew. And again, individuals with synesthesia experience a surreal blending of sensation, perception, and emotion. So neuroscientist Ramachandran says, because synesthetes have more connections between the different sensory areas of the brain, they can taste colors, see sounds, hear shapes, and touch emotions. How amazing. And it's actually especially prevalent among poets, writers, and artists. And studies have shown, I've given some examples here, that people with synesthesia are better creative thinkers, hence them being commonly poets and writers and artists, and they have a greater capacity for empathy. So my thinking then, what's interesting is it can actually be developed by anyone. So we all have the capacity to the world from a synesthetic perspective. So for me, that's what we should be doing in universities, right? Is trying to develop this capacity to see this world, the world in a hyper-connected way, which we can do through interdisciplinary thought and through fiction and poetry. Because again, as she says, anyone can learn to associate qualities such as colors and personalities and locations. And you can do this again by making associations and connections between disparate things, by metaphorizing, again, which makes poetry a good way to do this. So one study that I've been planning to do is an EEG study, and again, with a group of students, including these ones, where we're looking at empathy in the brain and poetry, and having students read poetry, and then another group of participants reading depoeticized versions of it, with the hypothesis being the areas associated with empathy will be more active. So it's another project I hope to do with them connected to this idea. And again, as I said, education should therefore seek to encourage students to experience the world as a synesthete does, kind of astonishingly interconnected system of breathtaking complexity, which the world is. And again, we can achieve this through interdisciplinary teaching. And then just to move on, I'm going to talk briefly about empathy and collaboration, and then that will lead me to the stuff that I've done with my students, and then it will put the floor over to them, give the floor over to them, and they will blow your minds. So again, empathy teaches us that we all see the world differently. I had a student, when I read Eden Robinson's Son of a Trickster, suggest that tricksters are hyper empaths because they have the power to inhabit and experience manifold identities and ways of perceiving the world, and very often very different ones too. So again, this idea of us all being very much the same in our ability to empathize, but also that we can connect this way and have different experiences. And let me see. And then a quotation that I love by Robinson is, every living creature, every drop of water, and every somber mountain is the glow of some bloated dying star. Deep down, we remember wriggling through the universe's beams of light. So again, this idea that we're all stardust and interconnected on a physical level as well. I also wanted to bring in talking about empathy and pedagogy. This is a great study that I read recently, and she talks about empathy and the pedagogy of empathy and how it can develop cultural empathy. So what she says is cultural empathy being the ability to cognitively, effectively, and behaviorally participate in the reality or world of a cultural other. Interdisciplinary and empathy-based approaches to teaching are actually increasing intercultural awareness and sensitivity. So I really wanted to bring that study in as well, because I think it's really important and key to my philosophy. And then to bring in robot proof again, he talks about something called cultural agility, and that being a cognitive capacity that teaches students how to operate deftly in varied global environments and to see situations through different and even conflicting cultural lenses. So again, really key to my approach to teaching. And I wanted to bring in Maple League as I leave now. We're getting close to the students, to the collaborative efforts with students, which is Maple League says in our shared efforts, we're guided by two fundamental questions. What can we do together that we cannot do on our own? And how does working together enhance what we already do on our individual campuses? So this is being done at all 4 campuses, amazing work. And I'm really inspired by this because I really find collaborative teaching especially important, which I've done with students, which I will be doing more with students as well. So I'm going to move on a little further. These are more slides that I may come back to, but I just want to make sure we get to the students. So for collaborative work with students, I have a Brains and Banter podcast. So I've had students like Colin and Marquesa, who are here today, come on the podcast. And then I also host it with former students. We've interviewed former Green Party leader Anna-May Paul. And I've hosted several events, interdisciplinary ones about mental health and university students, organized some social justice events with students, tracking COVID in BC prisons with 2 former students as well. So all of these collaborations, again, just remind us of the community engagement side of academia too, how we're not just isolated within the university, but connected to the wider world. And so what the 2 events that I did at Bishop's that I'm most excited about and that the majority of these students participated in was called Empathy, Social Justice, and the Arts. Several students helped me with this, and students performed poetry and music. Some of it they actually worked on in my classes. And so really taking a creative approach to being at the university and sharing everything they're doing. I had student AP Bergeron actually turned this into a video. So Sarah Boudreau, who's also here, recorded it. And I'll just show you a quick clip from it. Very beautiful.
That push and pull, contracting with each gust of smoke.
Screaming and running to the streets at night, shoeless and shrieking with laughter. We pull them out of the sky. They are shiny and black. I'm wearing them like rings, like armor. I am safe in their watchful eyes. They never look away. They just look up. Tell me, tell me, tell me. I have a historical roster memorized, and I know the faces of men with scars in their thighs.
Though inside is a woman's dreadful blood.
A little more John for me. So again, it was the first interdisciplinary event, and I could not have done it without the students. They all helped me with taking pictures, with taking videos, with organizing it, with everything. So especially Colin Ahern and Isabel. So they created a group called Wit and Whimsy, and it's a student art and poetry group. And so this was inspired by Naz Sidhus, who was another student who performed at Empathy, Social Justice and the Arts. And again, it was just a really beautiful coming together of students just getting to share their various talents, and people from the community coming in as well. So that, again, check them out, Wit and Whimsy _BU on Instagram. And it's now being taken over by 2 other students doing a fantastic job. So that inspired a second event on April 6th, Empathy, Social Justice and the Arts Part 2. And this was much bigger, more participation from the community. We had a queer post-classic rock band performing. Actually went to Mount Allison, and some of the students interviewed the performers as well. And again, this was fully organized by students. I couldn't have done it without them. And photos taken by Sarah, and then Zachary Boland, another BU student, created. I'll just show you a little clip from it, but this video from it. So I don't want to play too much because I'm getting close to the students. So we have beautiful Marquesa Mitchell singing here, but I think I'll keep moving. We're almost there. So one more thing I do with my interdisciplinary teaching is bring in guest speakers, academics, students, etc., from different disciplines and cultures and backgrounds, because the thing with interdisciplinary teaching is I don't know everything about everything. And so it really helps to have people who are experts in fields that I don't know as much about come in and share their knowledge. So I have Kim Gutzkin, an Indigenous musician and artist and activist, coming to speak to my eco-criticism class. I've had Lauren DeCray, a poet and author and strategist at Google, share her poetry and do mindfulness and meditation with the students. I've had partner, the queer post-classic rock band, talk about narrative songwriting in my short fiction class. So a variety of individuals coming in, again, just to add to what I have to say, because I can't cover it all. And then most importantly, student presentations. So a lot of these students are here right now, but I've had Archer and Emerald co-taught a class for my short fiction. Naz co-taught a class with me. AP Bergeron has been a guest talking about his film. Salomia, you'll meet today, presented with AP there about his film. Colin did a brilliant guest lecture on autobiography of my mother. Leah guest lectured about her best project and book coming up on eco-anxiety. So it just really, I think it's so nice for the students to have their peers come up too and talk. And it's just so exciting to see them navigating the questions so expertly and sharing their ideas. So I think I really want to give students a chance. So after this, these are just examples of different assignments and interdisciplinary assignments that I have done with students. I've had some great educational pamphlets created by education students, one on intersex. I may not have time to show it, but Sarah created we drew a mind-boggling multimedia reflections project that had paintings and poems and playlists and analyses. I still have the painting that I want to share with you. Poetry collections, D&D campaigns, etc. Spotify playlists, I think are my favorite, where they choose songs related to course content, and then they have to provide analyses of how it relates. So again, the importance and value of creativity. So I think I'm going to, from here, I have more I'd like to say, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I would like to start just by talking to the students a little bit. And how I learn both, I guess most is what I'm trying to say is through different perspectives from students in different backgrounds too. Marquesa, I am staring at you. I don't know if you want to start us off, because she was in my women writers class and had so much to say about feminism and social justice. So Marquesa, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hi. How are you? My name is Marquesa. Later, unmute later. Okay. Yeah, so I was one of the students in Brynn's classes, and I had the honor of having Brynn. It was such a great class. I can't even explain how much I've learned and how much it's opened so many opportunities for me too, as like she's included me in all her things. But I did a podcast singing. I've been singing for a lot of her shows and everything, and it's been super interesting. But what I'm studying currently at Bishop's is sociology, and specifically a concentration in gender diversity and equity. So what I like to bring mostly to the educational system is a lot of talk about how to include feminist frameworks and intersectional frameworks to learning, and how that can be put into a classroom. And so the things I talk about usually as a student, and how I want to be taught, and I tell this to Brynn all the time, is just it's just to have a classroom agreement where students as well as teachers recognize educational barriers that students have, like equity and equality, because the two are not the same, but a lot of people do not distinguish the two. And also just to discuss a lot about acknowledging colonial and decolonizing the spaces in which we work in. And that's how, anyways, I don't know. That's how I would see the educational system. And there's many ways of doing so, but I don't know exactly what you all want to get into. I don't know, Brynn, if you have more, but.
No, that's fantastic. It is such an important point, is the decolonizing the classroom, and also, yeah, looking at equity and rights and equality. So I'm so glad you brought that in. I think Sarah has her hand raised because it's something she's been thinking about a lot too.
Sure, yes. So hi, I'm Sarah. I'm currently studying at Queen's University. I just graduated from Bishop last year. And I think I'm personally really interested in that too, feminism. And with Brynn, we talked a lot about androgyny also. How androgyny or queer studies can help us also. Sorry, my cat is meowing. Can help us see the world in another way and expand our education. And so I think one of my favorite quotes I would like to share with you is from Virginia Woolf. It's a quote that Brynn showed us in class, and I actually used in my when I applied to my universities, and probably one of my very favorite quotes of all time. And it's that the androgynous mind is resonant, porous, and that it transmits emotions without impediment. It is naturally creative, incandescent, and undivided. And I think to me, that's something I really enjoy looking at, especially in the context of education. How we can try to stay away from binaries or restrictions, dichotomies, and try to have a healthy dialogue and expand the way we see the world. I think it helps with creativity, with connecting with one another, with like critical empathy, and just goes really well with what Brynn was like talking about at the beginning, and like how it can help us create new neuron pathways. And to me, it's one of my main concerns with education. I would say just expanding and including other identities that like have often been forgotten in, I think, our education system.
That is so fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, and that's one of my favorite quotations too. And it really, yeah, it does speak to the fluidity of our identities and that we change, and there's just not either or not one way. And that's what education does for us too, is we're just constantly growing and rebirthing and becoming new versions of ourselves based on these new ideas. So thank you so much for sharing that. That sort of makes me think it's also connected to creativity. I know, Erin, you had some thoughts on creativity in education, right?
So I won't take up too much of your time because there are so many amazing students who also were wanting to touch on a similar subject. But I never really noticed how important creativity and diversity was in the classroom until I took one of Brynn's classes. I've taken 2, 3, I'm in my third one. I'm in my third class with Brynn. So now more than ever, I realized how important it is to not only open up a creative space, a safe space for students to learn and to explore what they're interested in, but to have that translate into evaluating how students take in information. So I think that it's incredibly important to give students creative freedom and independence in their educational journey, because as we were saying, every student has something, we all have different interests, and we're all, we can bring so much to a classroom. And I think it's super important in the university setting, especially, that we give students the tools to do that. We give them the tools to open up these neurological pathways that Brynn was talking about. So I think that it's super important that we talk about that, because a lot of educators are kind of stuck in their ways, but I do think that creative ways of expressing the material that you learn in an academic setting is the future of education. So I think that's a really cool subject that I've learned in Brynn's classes. And I know she loves Spotify playlists, and that's something that I've submitted twice for final projects. And that's something I never knew I could. And it's a way of translating what you learn in the classroom to your everyday life. And it's something that, I don't know, I've learned from her. And I think that it's something that's really cool and a super cool topic to discuss. So, yeah.
That was just eloquently stated, and so, yeah, so beautiful, Erin. Thank you. And yeah, her playlist, so smart too, so on point. Yeah, it was just fantastic. So, and you're talking about like the creative portion of being in academia and creativity and learning, I think makes me think of experiential learning too. Possum, I know you're here right now and amazed by the work you do. And Colin, I know you were going to, and then we'll jump to Salomia. She also wanted to bring in experiential learning. But Colin, do you want to talk about that and Shakespeareans as well?
Sure. So I had a bit of a circuitous path to getting where I am now. And I think Brynn was crucial in kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with the direction of my life. Like my first class with her, my final assignment, like the final project, I had written a novella for her it was a horror story. And then that kind of opened up a lot of other pathways and stuff. And I think that those opportunities where you get to kind of dive headfirst into whatever your project is or create your own thing and you get more hands-on experience is very, very valuable. Since then, I've worked for a communications office at my university, and I've gone to Stratford, Ontario, with Jessica Riddell for a number of plays and that sort of experiential learning opportunities. And I think that those opportunities molded my understanding of my future, my career, and my relationship with the English language in a way that classroom settings would not, because you're sort of steeped in whatever you're going to be doing rather than sort of rushing idly with theory and concepts. And it's important to have those classes as well to give you context and to give you the necessary tools to sort of dig into these things. but these experiences, I think, are ultimately the most rewarding. And if you come at them with an open mind and humbly, then you have the most amount of potential to gain from them.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, Colin has been instrumental in my teaching too, and he's well read in the Gothic especially, and so I've books that I hadn't even thought to look at, or poetry. He's brought to my attention too, so it's been really useful for me too. So thank you, Colin, and I'll get Salomia to jump on since you also wanted to mention experiential learning, a few other cool things.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Salomia. I'm studying business management at Bishop's. And I'm one of the students from Brynn's short fiction class last spring, which was absolutely wonderful. As she mentioned, I presented an analysis on one of the previous students' films, who I believe is here too. And it was a very good example of just how you synthesize the creativity in the classroom. So students are just sharing that space, that open space with their different interests, which sometimes converge, sometimes they diverge, but they always consistently inspire everyone. And just to touch on experiential learning, like I promised, I'm a business student, and in my program, there's a lot of experiential projects. So we have case competitions, we have consulting with real external clients, we have with a lot of experiential kind of tied into our syllabus. And I'm also doing an honors project on experiential learning. And I think it's a very important aspect of learning. Many people attend university not just for academia, but also to work. And so having that kind of experience and being allowed to make mistakes, since it's just a university course, you know, the worst you can do is get a few marks off or, you know, get a bad criticism, but it's just that on the line. It's not your entire career. So it's very useful and important, and it's a perfect opportunity to network and get inspired and see where your strengths lie and what you want to do in the future. And just to bring back that short fiction class, as she mentioned and as other students mentioned, the final project with different format options, I think is brilliant because it really gives opportunities to each and every student to practice their strengths. If someone is more into analysis and research, to have a report to do. If someone's more into music, they can make their own song or find a playlist. If someone's more into creative writing, they have poems. So it's really giving that opportunity for everyone to express themselves equally.
Thanks, Solo. Yeah, and she did just a fantastic, again, presentation on AP Bergeron's film, A Passage. And so maybe I'll bring AP up next. He has, so he wrote the short film, A Passage, part of the BU Arts Fest and nominated for other festivals, but he's been part of a lot of performances and guest lectures. So AP, do you want to jump in and talk about sort of how you've been, sort of your approach to teaching and how sort of your ideal teaching methods or anything at all, if you're there? There he is.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brynn. What a nice intro. It's great to be here. So many friendly faces. This is really, really wonderful. Yeah, I can just speak a little bit to my experience with how, I don't know, Bishop's has kind of like retrained my brain as to how we approach education and pedagogy in general. It's actually, I recently graduated, but it was my second bachelor's degree. My previous experience was at Dalhousie University, and I felt pretty disconnected from the system of like how it was just a very conventional approach, and I felt very impersonally, approached generally when I was there. And then coming to Bishop's was just like a complete upheaval of all those preconceptions that had been established by that. And a big element of that for me was in filmmaking, which was a new creative approach for me that I hadn't ever explored until coming to Bishop's. And through that, I've been able to learn an entirely new artistic discipline. I've created 3 films being at Bishop's, kind of a trilogy. And since then, I've like seen that film, is kind of like as a means of learning and educating is just one of many ways. But, like creativity as like, as a way of expressing concepts for me is like the only way I can really like fully take them in and apply them to my own experience. And I've actually since graduating. I now work in film at Bishop's, and I'm a videographer here. And I've had multiple conversations with various professors discussing the concept of using creative approaches, especially video, as an alternative to conventional essay writing, especially in light of the rise of ChatGPT and other AI-assisted ways of creating assignments that have obviously been exploited a bit in recent times. And there's something about the creative act that is so much an extension of the individual that can't be replicated by AI. And I think that's something that we should explore more and more because, yeah, it's just unique to us. And it's a beautiful new way of approaching education. So yeah, I won't take any more time, but thank you.
Thank you, AP. Yeah, he's creative in every sense possible. It's a little annoying, but yeah, anyway, so thank you so much for that. Really important things you said. I'm thinking I saw Archer in the chat. So Archer, the historical genius, do you want to jump in and tell us your thoughts?
Thank you, Brynn. Yeah, of course. I mean, genius is every once in a while, but I think there's just so much going on in this talk, and I'm so glad to be here because hearing all these amazing students talk about their experience has just shot my normally scatterbrain into so many directions, as always. But I just I began connecting my experiences in studies and in my life with everything that's been said, and I keep jumping back to the theme of this talk, which is empathy and connection. And I'm once again reminded that this kind of stuff just happens all the time at Bishop's. It's a small school with a big heart, and I think Brynn, that's one of the beating hearts of the school right now, mostly because of how you try to bring in this new cooperation between students and professor, and that's just great. I think Aaron, you said before that how the students need to play to their interests, and that makes education way better. I really feel that. I love to in history connect with how people lived before, but the way that it helps me learn is because it connects me visually and mentally with people who lived in different time periods, and it helps me consider and empathize with their situation in life. And Bishop's has also given me a chance to experience language differently. And I've taken, for example, Abenaki courses in Old English, and those were difficult. But the way that I held on to these concepts is by renaming things in my phone to Old English things and Abenaki things. And for example, now I'll never forget the word for mother in Abenaki because I renamed my mom's contact to Nigoas, which now I know forever. And this, as my usual scatterbrain forms a huge map on a huge set of dots, Spotify playlists have a value in that once you create this and think critically about why you pick songs for this, whatever subject you're doing, then you're going to think about all those thoughts that you had once you were making that playlist and that creative process. And you're keeping it in your pocket on a playlist in your phone, everywhere that you go. So this just reinforces this thought that I have that there's constant connection between who we are and this world that we live in, the language that we have, how we collect our stories, and keep them with us in very in diverse ways, in mental, physical, and most importantly, human. So all those things happen in that classroom, and I'm just so thankful for it.
Oh, beautiful. I love listening to Archer talk. He's super creative too, wrote an amazing short story for the class, and then also, again, presented with another student for like an hour. Just brilliant, way better than me. So anyway, thank you, Archer. Archer and Leah know each other, and Leah's connected to history. And so I think Leah, and then Karina, because Karina's going to talk about the environment, and Jolene, I haven't forgotten about you. So Leah, jump on in.
I don't really know where to start. I really like what you're doing, Brynn, even though this semester is the first time that I take a class with you. Although we connected, I think last year at a networking event. I said I was writing a book on eco-solutions, and right away we just connected because of your passion for the environment too. I agree with everything that the students said. For me, I always felt like the education system was a bit outdated or hasn't really evolved in like more than a century. Like the classroom environment and the way of teaching is very like rigid and monotone sometimes. And I really like the creative approach because I like to do a bit of everything, but creativity is something that I always valued. So, I consider myself a multi-potentialite, so I have passions from everywhere. I'm going to put the word in the chat if you want to.
Heard. Yeah, I'm writing it down.
Yeah, so I like to introduce myself to people as a multi-potentialite because I don't like just one thing. And, I think last year or last semester, we were talking with the history department because we read the book Washington Black, which was a fictional story about a Black boy who fled from slavery. And we were talking about a different approach to reading history through fiction. And I really like that approach too. So, because I like to write fiction, and I just think it's a way that students can connect a lot better than, say, sometimes academically dense texts, for example. Even though they're fun, sometimes it can get dreadful, especially if you have 5 or 6 classes and you have like 2 readings a week for each class. So that can get like pretty monotone really quickly and overwhelming. And I also really like podcasts because I feel like we live in an era where time is very precious. And so like if you listen to a podcast, for example, of a topic, then you can maybe go to the gym and get a workout done, or you can commute to school or to work or wherever. So you're still getting that work done. It's just, I don't like the expression, but like kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So yeah, I just really like the creative aspect, and I'm looking forward to creating something artistic in this class that I'm taking with you this semester. So
yeah. Oh, thank you. And Leah, before you jump off, she also did this really interesting thing with my class called bionic reading. Do you want to quickly explain that for people who might not have heard of it?
Yeah, well, bionic reading is, I think it was invented for people that have a hard time staying focused with reading, especially those that have ADHD. So it bolds certain letters of each word so that the brain you don't have to read the whole word, but it fills in like that word. So if you want to like look it up, I can maybe drop a link or something. And
perfect. Yeah, thanks, Leah. Yeah, it was very interesting. She gave the students the option of reading it one way or another. I'm seeing the time though, so thank you, Leah. Wonderful. Karina, jump on in, you brilliant person.
Yeah, so I was with in Brynn's class, Literature and the Environment, where Leah actually showed us bionic reading and talked a little bit about her the chapter that she was writing in her book. And what I like thought about when I was, because I'm in education, right? So when I was thinking about when I was met with interdisciplinary stuff and integrative stuff, I was thinking of like building my own kind of collection of books because I am in teaching English as a second language. Like, how can I incorporate environmentalism into that kind of space? Because normally it would be simply grammar or like traditional, like easy to read books, which we are now learning that is not exactly that's not exactly giving students like their potential, giving them the opportunity to speak about what they want. Just because it's their English language doesn't mean that they cannot express more complicated stuff or go through or talk about their other interests. And it's not just about learning a language, it's also about learning about how they can express themselves. So yeah.
Love that. Thank you. Yeah, and Karina's really focused on the environment and wrote beautiful essay, like pro essay writer for sure. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Anything else you want to share before Jolene? Jolene, are you ready? Jumps in. Jolene, there she is.
Thanks, hi, everybody. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So, yeah, I got the opportunity to take a few of Brynn's classes throughout my years of bishops, and she allowed me to have so many different opportunities during her classes. It was amazing. By bringing the guests in that she chose, she allowed us to learn more about different subjects, but she also allowed us to make more connections between one another and also create new contacts with the people that she brought in. I think that her teaching style allows us to create links between different subjects that we wouldn't necessarily have thought of. And her love for teaching just like communicates through what she's teaching, and she just brings that spark to things that we're learning, and it just renders the subject that much more interesting. So all the PowerPoints, the guests that she brings, they just make that much. They just make what she's teaching make that much more sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's always been, such a pleasure having you in the classes too. Amazing critical thinker and just a warm person to be around. So did I miss anyone? I will make sure I brought in all these beautiful, smart people. But yeah, maybe what I should do now is just say thank you to all the students for being here. People, I don't know if you want to turn your mics on and give them a hand because they're amazing. Woo! You don't actually have to do that if you don't want to. But again, I've just loved being here with you. Juan Carlos, do you think now would be a good time for questions from the audience? I think we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm good with that if that sounds like the right plan to you.
Indeed, go ahead. So we can do questions. You can, just raise your hand and we'll get to you, or you can type on the chat and I'll read them.
Okay. And also to people I'm seeing the chat and I haven't had time to look. So if you've written something to me, I really, if I haven't responded, it's only because I haven't had a chance to look yet. So thank you for all these comments. I can't wait to read them.
So do we have any questions from the audience?
Seems like everything's clear.
Yeah, we were all very straightforward with our presentations. We did a brilliant job. I see a hand somewhere.
Acacia, you want to go ahead?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. That was so inspiring and resonated a lot. It was great to hear from the students, and yeah, I was just so impressed by it all. My question for you, Brynn, is how do you manage the rubrics or assigning marks to these types of things? Because I love the creativity for every student to kind of do something a little bit different that works with their learning style, etc. But how do you manage that on the back end with being fair in terms of grading?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a nice question. Also, very lovely photo. But yeah, such a good question. That is something that I had trouble with because it is often hard to grade and judge creative pieces. But what I do is they always have a written formal analysis attached to them. So I give the opportunity to create the playlist and be free about the interpretations and connections. But then there's also the written portion. So that's where I would grade the grammar and the structure and all of that. But then there's also the effort invested and the innovation, and then the connections that they've managed to how many works they've brought in. Some of the playlists will reference all 6 novels that we read, plus various themes. Some students break them into themes, but I tend to be able to account for sort of the difficulty of judging something that's creative by including that more formal written portion. So that's how but again, it's also something I'm constantly rethinking and trying to learn from. So if there's anyone in the audience who has suggestions for grading creative pieces too, jump in as well. But thank you so much for that, and for your kind words too about the talk.
That sounds great. Yeah, it makes sense. The written portion could add a little bit of structure there. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yeah, no problem.
Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to maybe add to that just the fact that we can all sort of explore our strengths, and that makes it already like very fair to me at least. And I've never like heard a student complain of like, oh yeah, my coworker could like do a playlist and I had to write an essay. Because if you want to write an essay, you can, and it means you kind of like to do that, and you're okay with how Brynn will grade you because that's your strength. And so for me, just having like so many opportunities and being able to explore what you want to do makes it already like way more fair, I think, than like writing an essay in like a formal version in a very strict manner. So
those are really helpful. That's good to know too, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. And that, yeah, again, that people are coming at it, yeah, equally, because they're choosing what they know best and what their strongest abilities are. And yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. Thank you. I see some hands, I think.
So we have, in order of appearance in my screen, we have Henry.
Hello, see if this works. I'm a first year, and basically first week and a half of classes and all huge lecture halls of 100-something students. So I remember coming from high school where, especially in some of my geography classes, the one I can remember best, where it was all about lots of connections and discussions, and then kind of here suddenly, and it's more just sort of learning content, kind of, it's presented, wondering, how all of this connection stuff, which is entirely how I think things should be learned, how that works when you have, how that could be applied maybe in a lecture hall of like 100 students when you're teaching something like, basic statistics or biology or whatever, some kind of, intro course that has to cover a certain amount of ground.
Yeah, that's a really, yeah, and how to sort of bring in the interdisciplinary sort of connections with it but then in a larger context. So do you mean also with like assignments too, or more when you're just engaging in the classroom and talking?
Mute myself. I guess especially on the assignments, I can see how you can always sort of integrate something interdisciplinary. Stats teacher just yesterday had some beautiful examples of various surveys and how that kind of linked. But yeah, especially in the assignments, I wonder, if that's you've done that. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ones that I've done, but again, I guess it's easier from like in the humanities and the English department. So they mentioned like the playlist that they would do, and then a series of like paintings. I wonder, like in math, there are things you could do like math and art or whatever. So I don't know if you're in like a math class. There are ways to look at like the art and fractals and the golden ratio and that sort of thing. So I think bringing in art is sometimes really helpful in the sciences. So I think that would be interesting. But yeah, I hadn't actually thought about it when you're teaching something like physics, but actually, because then you could so if you're talking about physics, then you can bring in that's connected to the science of consciousness, and the science of consciousness is also looked at through philosophy. And then that's also looked at in literature. So you can also just start making those connections between things. I find is always the best thing. But that's a fantastic question. Also exciting that you're starting university here. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, it's interesting. You got to kick all those ideas around as they carry on.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you for speaking up, Henry. Erin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I'm really excited today to hear the talk and the students' perspectives and all the connections across material, but connections with people as well. But I'm just, as someone who's teaching too, I'm not picturing the classes that you teach as being rows of seats and people sitting down. What does it actually look like in the classroom to do this?
You know what? They actually are rows of seats, and then I do get them to break up into groups and talk. But yeah, I always think that I wish that it could be like a circle or something, a lot like in graduate seminars, but there are too many students. And also, Henry, you mentioned too, like class sizes, because I'm doing a children's lit class that has 60 people now. So I am kind of learning to navigate sort of how that changes approaches and that sort of thing. But ideally, I would love people just to be able to face each other, and also like more movement. I've also experimented with having guest speakers come in and do like a meditation at the beginning of class, because it gets you into a more attentive state. So they've been like they've shown that if you meditate before you engage in something, your brain is more focused. And again, for something like that, you'd want to not be sitting in rows. But yeah, I think that's a really good thought about opening up the space in the classroom. What about you? Do you? Oh, Colin has his hand raised too. But do you have a way that you approach it, Erin?
Sorry, I remuted myself. It takes a little bit of time. No, I'm just curious. I love the idea of changing the way our classrooms look to help facilitate those connections and interactions. But like you, we're in classrooms mostly with rows of tables and chairs. So
yeah, it is so important. There have been studies too that show that like if a room is aesthetically pleasing and someone's like in a hospital room, they're more likely to recover if there are like flowers and paintings on the wall versus if it's just like cold gray walls. And so that applies to the classroom too. I think with learning, if we got to like make them prettier and more personal or something, that might engage so yeah, a lot to be said too about the space itself and how that engages the senses too for students. That's an amazing question. Thank you.
Colin, you get the last minute.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to build on what Brynn was saying. Typically, the end of her classes involve people working in groups to discuss ideas. So it is sort of a deconstructive approach to the setting of the classroom where people are turning chairs around to face each other to talk about things. And then that kind of like builds on your ideas and the homework that you're going to be doing for the next class. So it is in rows for a while, but in all the classes I've had with you at least, at some point we do kind of deconstruct this more conventional setting in favor of one that's a little bit more equitable.
Oh, thank you. You said that very well. It's true. We do break up into groups. That's yeah. Thank you. So well said, Colin. That was definitely good last word.
We are at 1 p.m. so I'm gonna let people go, but there is something that we usually do and at your own comfort, and it won't be you have noticed that I recorded a video. Reach out to me if you don't want your intervention recorded. We can do some magic here on this end. But one thing that we like to do is just turn on the cameras and and wave to the wonderful presenters before we send them off. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Oh, woohoo! Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. That was the best. And yeah, thanks, Juan Carlos. Great job moderating, and to Maple League and everyone.
Thank you, everyone.